Are you looking to refine your sales team and increase your company's revenue? Leading your sales team is an ongoing improvement process. Join Harry Newhan from Eric Lofholm International as he interviews top sales managers in the world. Discover the best practices that rocket them and their teams towards success. Boost your recruitment, motivation, and training techniques, leading you to build a top-producing, synergetic sales team. Welcome to CSI for Sales Managers.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Harry Newhan here with continuous sales improvement for sales managers with best practices. And I've got a great guest on the line here, and thanks for joining us. His name's Matt Catheincchia, and Matt's here in the Detroit area. It turns out we live in the same city. It's amazing, and we met through the internet. And Matt's going to show us some exciting things that he's experienced through his career of sales management and best practices and what he's got going on. So thanks for joining us, everybody. And Matt, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you got a lot of things going on. I'm going to have you share a little bit about your background, the position that you're in, because I believe you told me you were vice president of sales and you have managers underneath you that you manage that take care of a bunch of salespeople. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us a little about your background first, because our audience likes to relate at that level, and then we'll get into some questions.
Great. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time to be able to be on this podcast. I love what you do. There's a lot of sales management training out there, sales training out there, but not necessarily the management side. So I do appreciate what you do. Yeah, like you said, we're both, I'm not sure if you were born in Metro Detroit, but I'm born and raised in the metropolitan Detroit area, born and raised in the food service business. And I appreciate being in this marketplace. And I'll touch on that just briefly. I've had many opportunities through my career to be relocated and to go to other markets and with different companies. But there's a certain level of work ethic here in Detroit that I truly appreciate. And there's kind of a grit. So it's a great thing. So yeah, absolutely. I love being here. I'm as we kind of discussed earlier, I'm of Italian American descent. My grandfather came over from Sicily, and I really do love that side of things. As we kind of talk about food, I'll get into that. I have a beautiful wife of 20 plus years.
Wow.
That has absolutely stuck around with me. So I'm blessed in that way. And two amazing sons, Salvatore, which is 19, and Santino, 17. So good Polish names there, right?
Yeah, right.
And I've spent 20 years building my career in sales management and specifically in the food service industry, from the distribution side of things up through manufacturing into many of the buy groups and so on and so forth. So it's been a fun ride. I currently have the opportunity to be the vice president of sales for Bellissimo Foods. Bellissimo is a group of independent Italian. It's the largest group of independent Italian distribution across the country. So when you think of distribution, it's really that local pizza / Italian distributor that gets all that lovely product that you guys and everybody enjoys when they go visit their favorite restaurant. So we have roughly 53 independent Italian distributors. We're growing that work with us from coast to coast. So everything from our buddies up at Macucci in Maine over to the Italian family out in California that runs the local place there in the LA market. So I'm a self-proclaimed foodie. It's kind of part of my background. I definitely enjoy the culinary aspect of my job, and I would say the thing I love most is really just being able to make a phenomenal meal for friends and family when I'm not on the road traveling. So I absolutely love what I do. I think, far too often as we, build our careers and do the things that we're doing, we kind of lose sight of the fact that, we travel a lot and we, sales managers are out there helping grow organizations, but you got to love what you do to be able to express the passion for the job. So I think that's a key for me. So that's a little bit about me.
No, it's amazing that you say that, because there's a lot of people that I've met through my career that are stuck someplace where they're really not happy but they're stuck because they got the bills, they got the mortgage, they got the family, and they don't know how to get out, and they don't know where to go, but they're not following their passion. So for you to have your passion, oh my God, that's a blessing. And you mentioned my background. Yeah, I was born and raised in Detroit, St. Joseph Hospital, and born and raised in the east side suburbs. Grew up in the restaurant business, actually. My family owned a local Big Boy over here for many years. So I grew up in the Big Boy on the other side of it, the franchise side of it. So we got that in common as far as food. And I love what you said. You're a foodie. That's good. Growing up in the food business, how can you not be, right?
Right. Absolutely. I enjoy it. It's great.
That's awesome. So let's go ahead and get into a couple of the questions here for our audience. So, Matt, what do you feel is the most important thing for you about sales managers, managing your team or your key people, your inner circle? What do you feel is your best advice you can share with everybody?
I think it's pretty basic, actually, Harry. I think it's something that we overlook oftentimes at the management level, but I think it's still a relational business. My father has been in this food service business for 40 plus years, and I kind of followed in his footsteps. And he taught me early on, it's treating people right, and it's knowing your team. So if I had to kind of narrow it down to one thing, it's really knowing your team. Whether you're, from the VP level to the director level or wherever you're at the sales management process, it's investing in your people. Who are they? What makes them get up in the morning? What makes them tick? What are their skills? What are their shortcomings? What are the things that, that drive them? I think sometimes that really is one of the most important things is kind of understanding, we're all we have our strengths and we're strong in a lot of areas. And then there's many other areas where we have weakness, where we need more development, more sales management to pour into us, to help us get better, to challenge us. And so from my perspective, that's kind of what I've thought is, really trying to get to know my team, really trying to drive down and understand the things that are important to them and the goals and the skills that they have that they want to develop and things like that. And then one thing that I think is kind of more of it's almost like a life goal for me, and it's a life statement. It's expectations, right? Setting expectations. I think far too often you can get in a difficult situation in managing a team when you haven't clearly communicated what the expectation is and you haven't collaborated. The best managers I've had through my career and the best employees I've had are those in which we can sit down on a review process, or as we start to build a plan, collaborate together, build what the expectations are. And it allows, through that process, it really allows you to have discussion and be very transparent with exactly what the goals are, not only for that person, but the goals for the organization as you drive forward. So I think, collaborating together, expectations, knowing who your teams are, I think are definitely some points that oftentimes get overlooked.
You brought some really good points, Matt, and I think they go together. When you're getting to know your team, that builds trust and loyalty, because they don't feel like they're just a number. They feel like, you're bringing them into the family, atmosphere, that space. Yeah. And then I think it makes it easier for them to buy into those expectations that you're setting when they feel that you're there with them in loyalty. Am I getting that right?
100%. Yeah. When loyalty is key, right? I think especially in sales, all good salespeople want to know that they like the person, they're getting up, they're working for somebody, they're part of a team, they're driving an overall goal. That's important. I think most salespeople that I've met through my career, especially those that are, we all know those self-motivated go-getters that, want to drive and have a high competitive nature.
You mean like you and me?
No, not at all. Yeah. So I think it's important. Absolutely.
Okay. That is really good. Thank you for sharing that. So next one, to get those people trained where they're buying into your expectations, what would you consider your best training idea to get them in that space?
For me, Harry, it's really kind of getting them to understand all departments in the organization that you're working for. I think as you're training people and as you're bringing them aboard, oftentimes in our distribution world that we're in, I'll bring new employees in and have them work with AR, have them work with customer service, have them work, be in the warehouse and on the trucks, and understand that the truck drivers that are delivering the product that they're selling, whether they're in Arizona or in December in Minnesota, what they go through, and I think it's important. I think it definitely, because salespeople, I think oftentimes from my experience, have the philosophy of, we're driving the sales, we're bringing the business to an organization, let everybody else deal with the rest of it. And the more that people can be well-rounded in their process, the more that managers can share that type of information and really get the training implemented for people to kind of drive the overall goal. I think the better that they understand, and it ultimately gives a better experience for the customer base. So I think, from a training perspective, I think it's vitally important. And then the one thing that I think often gets missed is after you've brought them in and you've trained them, and after they've gone through the different departments, is having a follow-up conversation, understanding areas where they think, wow, you guys really excel in these different departments, but I do see maybe there's room for improvement in this and that. And so I think it really does a twofold thing. It teaches the individual the organization, and then you continually get feedback on things that maybe can be done a bit better for the customer experience.
I think a lot of companies miss this point, and I think this is really good, Matt, because if you don't know what shipping is going through and what they've got to do to deliver what you sold, you do have that attitude like, why can't they do it? Why isn't it there? Where is it? Boom, boom, boom. So giving that exposure, I think that's an exciting idea, in because we're a team. There's no I in team. We don't do this by ourselves. If you don't have the team and they're all not playing on the same page, then it really puts a kink in the wheel. So thank you for sharing that. That's really good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing on that team thing that you hit on there, Harry, that I think is important is, as you're bringing people aboard, I think, understanding the environment that new employees, or that as you're training people and employees are coming in. So there's an environment and a personality for each and every company out there. So to build a team, you've got to know the right personalities that make sense for that team. And I think, I have a philosophy that I talk about a lot with my team members, and it means something different to everybody, that's out there, but it's work hard, play hard. And really what that means is we're all here to do a job. We're all here to hit a common goal. We're all here as a team to make it work, but you have to have fun while you're doing it. And I think oftentimes that kind of gets lost in the mix. And we talked about that early on, but, I try to create an environment where we're all going to have fun hitting the goals that we're setting for one another and that we're achieving as a group. So
now this brings me to my next question as far as hiring and recruiting, because obviously you want to get the right person that's going to fit into that culture and that environment that you've already got going, because you don't want to throw cold water on a hot stove. So what do you feel is your best recruiting or hiring advice, or even interviewing advice that you can share with our audience to get that right person to fit into that culture?
Yeah, I think clearly communicating and being transparent. I think transparency is key. There's many people that I've seen out there, and through my career, I've seen where people are maybe painted a picture of an organization that's quite different than the organization that they end up being employed by. And really you're setting yourself up and that individual up for failure in that way. So I think first and foremost, it's knowing who you are, right? Knowing the organization that you work for, and knowing, again, like I said, the environment of what the organization is, the goals, and then being very clear and transparent. I think the best way to recruit people is being open and honest with the opportunity that they have. And then that gives them the real potential to kind of excel as they step into that role. So I think, and then we talked about it a bunch already, and I think it's so important, but in sales, team is such a big thing, right? I think we oftentimes, I read a lot of books and definitely try to advance some of my knowledge in the managerial side of things. And I think there's so many correlations to great sports teams, right? And everybody filling a role and working together and kind of going after it. So as I build a team across the country, it's really about casting a vision and making sure everybody understands what that vision is, so we're all driving towards that.
So this brings up an interesting thought. When you have that transparency and that openness, do you also say, here's the good things that we got going on, and here's the challenges that we got going on, and we're working on these? Do you show them both sides of the coin so that they're not surprised or shocked? Well, that's not what I thought was going on. So tell me about that.
Yeah, transparency is really what it's about, right? And so I think when you have to be transparent in the good and bad things within an organization, so that and the other part is as you're recruiting people and bringing people along, if they're fully aware of the company that they're coming into and fully aware of the team environment that you're creating and maybe areas of weakness, I think far too often managers are maybe not confident enough to be vulnerable to let people know the weaknesses that they might have within the organization. And I think that's vitally important.
That's a really good point, because some of the best ideas and inventions out there were from managers that were open enough to listen to somebody that was on the ground floor, somebody that was in the trenches, somebody that was on the front line to hey, here's a better idea, here's a better way, here's a suggestion. And that's a really good point.
Yeah, the best managers I've worked for, Harry, are those that understand when they're being managed up to as well. And so I think, to your point, listening to feedback from people who are working for you, I think, we have to be humble enough as people to be able to listen and learn, regardless of the position we're in with the company, if we all have the same common goal. And that's really what it's all about.
No, that's awesome. Way to go. So now you touched on this a little bit earlier as far as work and play, and work hard, play hard. So motivating ideas. What can you give us as far as some of your best motivating ideas to get people to buy into that philosophy?
Yeah. No, I think, we're talking about sales managers and motivating salespeople, right? So I think healthy competition is key. I think most salespeople thrive in a healthy competition, and there's absolutely unhealthy competitive environments that I've seen out there. But regardless of the salesperson, whether it's that high energy, high motivated individual that wants to get up each and every day and go after it, or it's the individual that just knows how to take care of their customers really well, and they might have a different approach. From a sales management perspective, we have to be chameleons and understand how to work with each one of those people in a different way, and to set up an environment that's competitive that allows people to thrive. And so I think, we have to keep it fresh. That's a term I use a lot. We have to keep it fresh. Things can definitely get stale through business processes. So that's kind of part of the whole keeping it fun, keeping it fresh thing. And then the one thing I think far too often that sales managers forget to do, and I've seen this through my career, is after you collaborate together, you build a plan, you put the plan in process and in place, and then achievement happens. Far too often, sales management forgets to celebrate their achievements of their employees. And so I think however that looks, that can look a bunch of different ways depending on the industry that you're in. But oftentimes the celebrating of the achievements and the goals that we're hitting, either collectively as a group or having lunches and things of that nature with individuals who are hitting their personal goals and things of that nature, all that does is kind of builds that whole thing we're talking about, which is team. And so I think all of that really motivates people, regardless of the type of person that they are. All of that collectively can motivate people to continue to drive things forward.
You might have heard of this study. There was a study done many years ago that still applies today, because they refresh it every now and then, where they wanted to know the top 5 reasons why people are at a job or leave a job or go to another job. And recognition was the number 1 or number 2 reason. And money was like 3rd or 4th or 5th. Recognition, and what we already talked about, that feeling of belonging to a family and a cause as opposed to a job. Those were the top 2. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. Now, as far as incentives, do you ever use like tickets to a concert, a ball game, or money incentives, or is it primarily just the recognition in, you get everybody together for a lunch and so forth?
Yeah, I use whatever works for that person. I think it goes back to knowing the person, right? I mean, there's people on the team that would love to get together with maybe sales management, have a nice steak dinner at the nicest place. There's other sports enthusiasts that want to go to their favorite baseball game, whatever that might be. So I think, I've used throughout my career, again, knowing if you know your team, you know exactly what to kind of use there.
That's good. That's really good. That forces your managers that you manage to make sure that they know their team, right?
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So let's go on the other side, and let's say, what can you share with the audience here? Maybe a setback that you've had in your career, where if you want to share, how bad was it, and what did you learn from that setback?
That's a great question, and when I first thought about this, the setbacks I think I've had many, right? We all have. I think anybody who is a quality manager has had many setbacks through their career. So I think that's something that's very common, and I think, again, I go back to the sports analogy. All of the greatest. I'm reading a book right now called, I think it's actually right here, called "Talking to Goats," and it's talking about the greatest of all time. And you read these stories of Muhammad Ali and Michael Jordan and all of these athletes, and them, Michael Jordan maybe not making his, I think, 7th grade basketball team or whatever it might be. There's little things where there's setbacks throughout your career. But I think to your point, if you're using those setbacks and learning from them, I think it really helps ultimately make you a better manager, because you're understanding through the process, of what you've gone through. And then as you manage people, it just allows you to be able to relate with people a little bit different. I've had a few setbacks. There's a couple I'll talk about. One is, I worked for an organization, a very large distributor that's pretty well known. And, there was a specific role that I was, managing within. And it didn't start out with clear communication. It didn't start out with a clear objective and a clear goal. So the goal that I was driving towards versus the goal that the organization had were very different. And so it didn't last very long, but I learned from it. Right. And so, there's things like that happen. I've been through many acquisitions, and I think we all know, acquisitions can be tough.
It can be.
But I'll kind of relate back early on in my career in the mid 90s, mid to late 90s. I read a book. It's a very simple book. You might know it, Harry. It's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I love it because it's a short read, but I think in today's environment, specifically going through COVID and everything we've gone through, if you don't know how to adapt and you don't know how to grow and you don't know how to persevere over setbacks that you've had, people who are not adaptable and easy to change are people that are very frustrated through this time. The more adaptable and the more easy to change and grow and acquire new skills and rethink how you go to market and all of those sort of things are things that I think have been very important through my career. And they're only becoming more important now, specifically from a sales management perspective. The same way of managing people is not something that any of us should strive for moving forward.
Yeah, times and things have definitely changed, and they're continuing to change. I guess thank God they're changing, because if everything was the same, none of us would grow. And you made a really good point there, and I found that if everything was smooth and sailing, you don't really learn and you don't grow. You're just along for the ride. And I was talking to a friend of mine. And he said, they hire me for when there's problems and challenges. When there's no problems or challenges, they don't need me. They hire me as a manager of managers. They hire me because when there's a problem, they want somebody that can solve the problem solver. So that's how you grow. That's how you get better.
One of my, positions within my career, my management positions in my career, it was just that, Harry. I wasn't being challenged anymore. I had grown within the organization and I had grown to the levels that I could grow to. And I think ultimate next step would have to be to relocate. We all know I'm born and raised Detroiter. I didn't want to do that. And so I would have to continually try to find new challenges and new things to continue to grow. And I realized great company. I'm still very close with many of them, but I realized it was time to definitely move on once that challenge of that next thing kind of, from a management perspective, you got to continually be challenged. So I agree with you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So bringing up the challenging part, do you encourage, sponsor, or pay for your managers to get continuing education? Kind of like the real estate industry. You have to have that Con Ed certification every year, in the insurance industry, that continuing education, because the laws change, things change, and managers, technology is always changing. And of course, last year, the whole world changed with COVID. Do you encourage them, like you're reading a book, you said you're an avid reader and you continually improve your skill and your craft. Do you encourage your managers, or is there an event or events on an annual, quarterly basis that you have them up their skills?
Absolutely. Yeah. With our environment, I call it the pizza industry. I mean, it's what it is. It's definitely an industry that has evolved quite a bit over the last 20 years. But I would say, depending on the level of management within our organization, we absolutely encourage it. And the nice thing about this new virtual world that we're all have gotten very, very used to is it's much, much easier to grow your skill set, not only by reading, but by being a part of so many different webinars and different informational type things that weren't necessarily available even in 2019. That are available. And so there's so many more resources today that people can find through the social media sites that they're on, or through whatever media, that they're a part of, that they connect to. So I absolutely encourage them to do that. I think that, if we're not growing, then we should never stop growing. Right. I mean, my father is 73 years old and he still goes out there and he still goes after distribution side of things and learns. And so that gives me a lot of hope, because I think that, that's what we need to continue to do, regardless of where we're at in our career, regardless of our position. We absolutely need to continue to invest in ourselves. But we as an organization absolutely invest in the managers within our company, 100%.
Okay, great. Yeah, what I found is once you lose purpose, then you lose a reason to get up every morning. So I'm really excited that your dad still has that purpose, because I watched my parents lose their purpose and they just continually deteriorated. So that's really important. So the last question here is, I'm going to leave it up to you. Any additional thoughts that you would like to share with our audience on strategies or best practices for sales management that we haven't covered yet?
A couple things. I mean, I think, when I say understanding your team, we talked a little bit about having entrepreneurial people on the team. I think that, a lot of salespeople are either in one of two boats, really. They're kind of more entrepreneurial in their mindset, or they're more task driven. Mm-hmm. And both can be very valuable. And so I think from a sales management perspective, understanding that and understanding that, there's dreamers and doers. And I think every organization needs that. And if you manage those people effectively, you can get a lot done. You can collaborate a lot with the dreamers to set some visions and some things. And again, we kind of talked about, as an organization, if you're leading that organization, you need to be vulnerable. And especially with those dreamers, need to be vulnerable with maybe some areas in which you're looking for help. And they can really kind of come up with some great things. And I think the better that they know the organization, they can drive some of those things. And then you have the doers, the ones that they're just looking for, they're looking for somebody to come along with the side of them. They're looking for somebody to manage them well, to set up some very clear tasks that they need to do throughout their annual basis before their next review and that sort of thing. And that's great, because I think, we definitely need that to make a strong team and to make a strong sales organization. And then, I talk about expectations, but I truly think expectations trumps everything. And then the last thing I kind of would leave with you, Harry, is that technology is, and I talked about, the new virtual world we're living in. Technology throughout my 20 years has changed quite a bit. Yeah. It's definitely allowed all of us to maybe work smarter, not harder, hopefully. Yeah, exactly. But the one thing that I think far too often that happens is we use technology to bog us down. We use technology in a bad way to really allow us to have more work. And when the intention is technology should free us up, should give us a sense of freedom and a sense of more things that we can get done. I think through 2020, many of us learned that, wow, we can have video conference calls with people and not fly from here to California and save quite a bit of money and get a lot done. In a 8-hour day, how many video conference calls can we have with different distributors throughout that day versus flying and maybe having to spend a week to hit all those distributors? So I think if you're using technology the right way and using social media, the one thing I always say is I encourage sales managers to really understand the social media part, because the people we're hiring now, the 20-somethings, they've never grown up without it. And so it's very ingrained in their world. And so I think, how do you use it, not from a personal perspective? I think many people know how to do that, but how do you use it in a business sense, whether it's LinkedIn or even Facebook and all the other social media sites? I think if from a sales perspective, you can stay in front of your customers in a different way, and the more that sales managers understand that and get behind it, the more that they kind of understand it and kind of help drive things. And then, ultimately, we talk about it, and I'll kind of finish with this. You have to build a strong team. You have to understand the totality of who your team is, and you have to invest into your team. And I think that investing in your team takes time. It takes patience, but the result could be dramatic. And the result can completely revolutionize the industry that you're in if you put the time and effort into it. So that'd be the final thing I would leave you with.
Well, that's awesome. I know there's so much more we could go into, especially with our backgrounds. You mentioned technology. That's actually how we met, through LinkedIn. And us old guys, and me anyway, learning how to use technology to get the word out there and help other people. So for that, we'll close off. Everybody, thanks. This is Harry Newhand with Continuous Sales Improvement for Sales Managers with Matt Catheincchia. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today. Appreciate it. And we'll see everybody back next Tuesday, and we'll get this one up. And we're excited to have all this information out there. Tell us how you feel. Send us an email or send us a note back for our audience out there. Let us know what you thought of Matt. And Matt, you want to say any final words there?
Thank you so much, Harry. Like I said in the beginning, I'll say it again. I appreciate what you do. There's not a lot of that kind of content out there for sales management. So I think it's great, and I appreciate the time that you took with me. So thank you.
Sounds good. All right, everybody, have a great day. Talk to you in a bit. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to get notified of the latest episode. Also, to learn more about improving your sales team, visit continuoussalesimprovement for teams.com. See you in the next episode, and have a great day.